certainly. So the longer the wavelength, technically, the longer or further light can penetrate up into a degree. Then you've got the absorption of light through water molecules, and then after about 1080 nanometers, it just cuts off, and light can't actually penetrate deeply. But there's that sweet spot almost with 1064 nanometers, 1070 nanometers, where you can actually get good penetration depth because the light scattering coefficient is actually reduced compared to higher energy or shorter wavelengths, such as 810 nanometers and 660 nanometers. And because of this penetration, you can increase or support a greater volume of cells or mitochondria in this sense. So
another one that was mentioned was there was a study with Hanley Liu and Tyrrell Pruitt, and in that study they showed the use of 810, 850, and 1064 nanometer lasers. And they used lasers primarily, and then they checked alongside with LEDs. And in this study, they actually showed that the 1064 had longer penetration, but actually longer sustained effect as well. And so that's why we really chose this wavelength.
Hello, Liam and Will. So, Liam, you are the co-founder, and Will, you are a consultant at Neuronic, a company developing neurotech using light therapy. So, welcome to Modern Healthspan, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Richard, for having us. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, I guess if we could start right at the beginning. So, your devices use light therapy, so photobiomodulation. Could you introduce what is photobiomodulation for you, and how does it work at a biological level?
Yeah, great question. So when you think about photobiomodulation, the first thing you could picture is nearly the sun, and 50% of the sun's light is actually near infrared light, which is the type of wavelength we use in light in our helmet. So photobiomodulation, meaning light, bio meaning your biology, modulation being the change. So it's the change of your biology through light, and that's the term broken down. So what does it do? Well, the light enters through the brain or through the skull, targets the brain and actually the mitochondria in there, the cells, and then it will produce more ATP. It increases your blood flow, reduces your inflammation, and increases your cellular energy.
It makes so the mitochondria generate more ATP. So can you go into a bit more detail on how the red light achieves that?
I suppose I can take over there. So when we look at, of course, mitochondrial activity, we're specifically looking at what is actually the acceptor of near infrared light. In this case, we use 1070 nanometers. So I know there's other types of, within the photobiomodulation industry, we've got 810 nanometers and red light therapy of 600 nanometers, but they all, in relative perspectives, do similar things. They all activate a protein structure called the cytochrome C oxidase. And what we're really trying to do there is support mitochondrial activity or support the rate of electron transfer of the cytochrome C oxidase. If we increase or support the rate of cytochrome C oxidase, we can improve and support at least the rate of mitochondrial activity.
Okay, so I do want to talk about the the wavelengths in a second, but it also increases the blood flow, and I haven't heard that before. Do we know why it increases the blood flow? Is it just because the mitochondria need more, I guess, food to generate this energy, or is there some other process?
So within the cytochrome C oxidase, you also have nitric oxide, and the light can displace nitric oxide within cytochrome C oxidase. And when it's displaced, it can flow through into your vessels, and of course, vasodilation can occur. And with this and with the increased rate of ATP reduction, you can, in this sense, increase the rate of cerebral blood flow. And if we're talking about transcranial photobiomodulation, for instance.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's releasing the nitric oxide, which is causing the vasodilation. Okay, excellent. So as you mentioned, many other companies or many other systems use different wavelengths, but you have chosen 1070, which is actually quite a rare a rare wavelength. Why 1070? What are the benefits of 1070 as compared to the other wavelengths?
I don't know if Liam, you want to start off this, or I don't.
No, I have an answer, but I think you probably have a deeper one, so go ahead.
Yeah, so we're talking about penetration depth, certainly. So the longer the wavelength, technically, the longer or further light can penetrate up into a degree. Then you've got the absorption of light through water molecules, and then after about 1080 nanometers, it just cuts off, and light can't actually penetrate deeply. But there's that sweet spot almost with 1064 nanometers, 1070 nanometers, where you can actually get good penetration depth because the light scattering coefficient is actually reduced compared to higher energy or shorter wavelengths, such as 810 nanometers and 660 nanometers. And because of this penetration, you can increase or support a greater volume of cells or mitochondria in this sense. So that's the essence, I suppose, or at least my perspective of the necessity to use this type of long wavelength. I think all these other wavelengths are great as well.
Yeah, I think another one that was mentioned was there was a study with Hanley Liu and Tyrrell Pruitt, and in that study they showed the use of 810, 850, and 1064 nanometer lasers. And they used lasers primarily, and then they checked alongside with LEDs. And in this study, they actually showed that the 1064 had longer penetration, but actually longer sustained effect as well. And so that's why we really chose this wavelength.
It was in all three as well. I know which paper you're on about, Liam. Yeah, it was increased oxyhemoglobin, deoxyhemoglobin, and cytochrome C oxidase. So it was a really great study to see.
Okay, and because because the brain is basically spherical, right? You need this depth to be able to get inside it, whereas other parts of the body you may be able to get away with using the other wavelengths, I guess. Would you agree with that?
I think so, yeah. I think what we're trying to do is target the brain, so yeah, it needs to go further in. And when you're looking at red, it's easier to just target on that tissue level on the surface. So yeah, that's primarily why you need the 1064 for this or the 1070.
Right. It's interesting about the light absorption because we did talk to someone who said anything over 1,000 gets, by water, that it gets absorbed by water. But if you're just below this 1080, then you're okay. Basically, it doesn't get absorbed.
Yeah, precisely that. Yeah, it's a complex thing. Biology, who would have thought? But that's the thing. I think if we look at the peak absorption of cytochrome C oxidase, or more specifically the chromophores within, which are the heme groups and the copper groups, you'll see that the peak absorption is 660, and you've got different peaks of 810. Hence why these are also used. But no one really looked at the longer wavelengths about peak absorption. And what you can see evidently is that there's a crossover. Once again, another reason why you use a longer wavelength, of course, of the volume, but it still can activate or support and interact with these types of chromophores. But it's complex overall.
And I think actually there was an interesting presentation done by Dr. Paul Gizeau in Durham University, and he wasn't saying anything about actually the water stopping the light getting through, but actually as a magnifying glass, similar to how like a magnifying glass would heat up and concentrate the sun's light on things. He was saying the same thing would happen actually with the 1064.
Yes. Yeah, I watched Dr. Chazot's talk.
Right.
Yeah. So he wasn't the person who said that water absorbed it. It was It was Dr. Glenn Jeffrey who was thinking, and he uses 670, but he uses it
Mm.
for eyes and things like that generally, rather than the brain. But if we think about 1070, like Paul Chazot is using 1070 for basically clinical trials in Alzheimer's. Is that one of the reasons that you picked 1070 because of the clinical history?
I think we chose it because of, again, citing back that study, it just showed longer sustained effect. And then there was a study evolving in the UK and elsewhere in the US where that just seemed to be the wavelength that we should use. We know there was a lot more published with 810. When we started looking into the industry, a lot of people were saying that the 810, the LEDs are cheaper just because they're more produced at that stage. There was a lot more of them. Every device was using 810, and there wasn't many studies with 1070, so natural, the price was a lot cheaper. So we had to incur that cost when we kind of switched to the 1070 very early on in our design. And, you know, it's having a great effect. We worked with clinicians that used to use 810. Some of them reported, not all, but some reported that they've seen the time that it takes for someone to go through the sessions or see results typically is lower with the 1070, which is interesting, right?
It is. Okay, so you founded this company, Neuronics, to develop headsets, well, to develop this technology. So can you talk a little bit, can you introduce Neuronics and what is the kind of the mission for Neuronic? I mean, at the moment you have this headset, but will you be looking at other things as well?
Great question. What is Neuronic? So we develop non-invasive neurotech devices using light therapy. The company was founded in 2021, and we had the idea basically to make light therapy accessible to everyone. So the idea actually came, I was scrolling on Facebook after a long day and came across this video of a guy called Max Burr. And it was an Australian gentleman who had Parkinson's. And it was reported by ABC News Australia. Max had Parkinson's and he was going to his local clinic to try and understand what they could do because the tablets weren't working too well anymore. He had seen this study over in Australia or New Zealand, I can't recall, on mice. And in the study, they shone the light on them and they got better. So Max went to his local GP and he said, hey, if it works on them, why not me? So this video reports 9 out of 10 symptoms improved after he'd built a bucket or got a bucket, put near-infrared lights in and stapled a strap under his chin. He was playing the piano again. And I thought, okay, you know, era here of fake news and things going online, so I didn't know whether to believe it. Anyway, I went on Google Scholar and I started reading all the articles and publications. There was under 5,000, I believe, when I first looked in the industry under the search term photobiomodulation on the NIH PubMed database. Now, as of last, I think it was December, it broke, and now it's over 10,000. And you can see year on year, the amount of research coming out on photobiomodulation has just grown. So anyway, near that time, I had a family member go through cancer and actually experience then the memory loss that comes with it, where she couldn't recognize people anymore, even when you were visiting. And so when I came across this idea and seen that, hey, it could be used for Alzheimer's as well, having experienced that, and around the time of COVID, I was pricing the risk on derivatives in New York, and I couldn't do that anymore. The sense of information, I couldn't work from home. So I started this with this idea and built from there. I thought it was a worthwhile cause. I seen the research developing on the topic, and I thought we could surely make a user-friendly, efficacious, and affordable device that people could use. And so that's kind of where the mission started. So we invest 100% of the profits back into research and development. It's why this device is nearly half the cost of the first one that we have out. Even though it's not the targeted approach, it's the holistic head. When you turn it on, all the LEDs are on. And we remove the controller as well to reduce the price, and now it connects with your phone. So we can make this affordable and accessible in two ways. One way is reducing the price, so you have economies of scale, which is what we're working on now. And then funding studies large enough to get FDA approval At some stage, it's going to take years and a lot of funding, but we'll get there, and we'll get it then on health insurance plans. So they're the two ways that we can make this accessible. And that's really what Neuronic is about. We want to make sure that everyone has access to this non-invasive, effective therapy that we've seen, people use and change their parents' lives, their loved ones, whoever it is that they're actually using this, seeing firsthand real results.
Excellent. So if we talk about, so you've got two devices, I saw it, and one of them is quite new, I believe, or it's in pre-release, or it's actually released now.
It's released. You can pre-order it, but it won't ship until March 3rd. Yeah. So it's all ready, but we're only shipping it out on March 3rd.
Okay. So if we think about the original one, right? It's called a
Neuradian 1070.
Yeah, 1070. Okay. So can you talk a little bit about how that one works? And I don't suppose you have one with you. You could hold up.
Will, you hardly have one there with you, do you?
I can quickly reach over and get it if you give me one moment. I actually have both here with me. So we can do, I suppose, the Neuradian 170 or 1070 first, which is our current device here. You can see it actually has a cable on the back that you would typically plug into with a power cord to a socket, and then you also have a screen that you can basically select your protocol and then customize your protocol. And then you've got 256 LEDs in here, near-infrared light, 1070 nanometers in wavelength. And then you can also actually control what quadrant do you want the light to apply. So the frontal region, the left side, the right side, and then the back of the head too. Do you want me to draw on the comparison to the other one as well?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, quick. Yeah,
very quick. Yeah, and then this is our most recent device here. This is the light device, and you can see here it's actually bigger in surface area. I think this one roughly the current is 560 centimeters squared, whereas this one is actually around 671 centimeters squared. So larger total surface area. And it's got 300, the camera zooms. Tell you what I can do. We can pause right here. And I can unblur. There you go. Right. And you can see here that it's a global approach. It's not quadrant specific in this case, but as I say, there's 300 LEDs, 291 powerful LEDs with 9 ultra powerful LEDs with the global approach as well. And I think, Liam, you could probably take over and talk about the other functions of the app.
So what I'd like to talk about is the first one. And so this would normally be used in clinics, would it, rather than in homes? And could you talk through how you would use it? I mean, did you kind of measure beforehand and then see the result? And how go ahead.
Yeah, basically, it's an online store that people can come to. And whether you are a parent of a kid that has autism, whether you're someone that wants to work with the device because you have just memory issues, maybe your loved one has got Alzheimer's, maybe you've been in a bad car crash and you have concussion. So typically people are reading the research on photobiomodulation and come into our website for an array of different reasons. So really it depends from that starting point, who you are, to the approach you're going to have. And so with this device, the first one, we recommend that people get consultation if they have some sort of issue that they need to kind of help work on. We don't provide medical advice, but it's better that they are able to talk with someone and get guidance on what protocol to use just to enhance, be it using programs for like 40 hertz to enhance your focus, memory, etc. People can also get a QEEG. So if you've had a concussion, that's going to show in your QEEG scan. And what we'll be able to do then is program the device to target one specific region or a few of the specific regions, and then try uptrain, downtrain the brain and target the specific area. And so in this case, you would buy the device and you'd get the consultation. Now, if I was a biohacker and I wanted to improve my brain health in general, I'm going to get probably 80-90% of the benefits from just buying this device, using it at home, plugging it in, and then using it, in the morning while I'm making my coffee or sitting down reading the newspaper, right? So the device can be used at home or it can be used in practice. We see neurofeedback professionals buying the device, and then clients will come in on a weekly, sometimes a couple times a week basis. In the COVID study that we did, it was 3 times a week. They did 14-minute sessions for a month, and then they got significantly better. So in this case, you can say that it's in clinic, and that's a great use for it. If someone has the likes of Alzheimer's and they're trying to use alternative therapies, well, typically there's no alternative therapy that's going to cure Alzheimer's, right? So you're going to have to continuously use it. Therefore, you're not going to continuously come into the clinic every day of the week to use something like this. Better off you use it at home. So the device can be used in both places. And to bring it to the new one, now we made it a little easier to be used at home. So if you're going to use a device at home and you want it simple to use, less wires, no tablet box, then the light device is probably easier for you.
Okay, so does the I keep want to say Neuralink. It's not Neuralink, is it?
No.
Does the first device have like a set of standard programs that you could use, right? So you can tune it specifically, or you can just use it generally.
Exactly. So what we did when we created the device was think about the customer journey. If you have something that you have to plug into different units, different settings, and create your own from the get-go, you're probably too scared to use the device. But what we did is we created 4 preset programs. So it changes from time, intensity, and pulse rate. So focus, for example, is going to be 3 minutes on at 40 hertz with a half intensity. And that's a preset program. Anyone could use it. It's a little bit of time. And once you start using it, you're going to notice very little effect. And over a long period of time, you'll start to see more benefits. Whereas if you're a researcher or you're a clinician, you go into another section on the control pad. And what you can do then is create your custom programs. So in this user interface, you're able to select the front, the back, the left, and the right. You're able to turn some of them off, some of them on, pulse them between 1 hertz all the way up to 10,000 hertz. We don't usually recommend you go that high, but for research purposes, we've programmed it into the device. And so it can get as complex nearly as you want it to be, and as researchers want the device to be, and as easy to use where you can simply turn it on and press the quick start button, or sorry, not the quick start, but the preset program, and use your session.
How many, I mean, what would the division of your market be in terms of personal biohackers and clinicians, percentage-wise?
Biohackers, not many. But in terms of at-home users, then it could be maybe 50-50, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and a typical protocol would be, you said like 14 minutes a day, like pretty much every day. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I recommend something like a preset program to start off with. So as I say, or as Liam previously mentioned, we have 4 presets and they all vary. So we would typically start off with a client, with anyone really, to recommend using a preset protocol to begin with. And they do that 1 times a day. And they can decide, is it 3 times in a week they want to use it, or is it every day, depending upon, well, themselves and their condition and the severity of their condition, or whatever they're using it for, if it's to improve support and mood. But then you can also have that ability to develop the protocol. And as I say, you have the custom function to maybe develop the time, which will, of course, give you that little extra support. And then, yeah, no, all I was going to say is we've never really gone past a protocol that goes beyond 30 minutes. We always stay on the other side, the lower side.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about light therapy is the biphasic dose response. And this was something that came up at the Photobiomodulation conference in London last year. and it was reported on. But really, there is like a, the Goldilocks principle where you can have too much or too little, and it's different for everyone. Some people are very sensitive to external stimuli. Some people will get dehydrated in the sun a lot quicker than others. And so we have to work sometimes with people to figure out what that sweet spot is for them. And that's why sometimes a consultation is very helpful.
So, what kind of symptoms would you get if you were overdoing it?
You might feel like, similar to being on the beach for too long, a little dehydrated, where you might seem a bit like drowsy or fatigue. Typically, this doesn't happen with sessions when you're using it, any of the preset protocols or the custom ones that we develop. But as Will said, if you're starting to kind of do things over 30 minutes and kind of take matters into your own hand, then you might just feel like, tiredness after using it, that your brain is just being overused because it's firing too much. So that kind of a way.
Right. So, I assume you would not, when would you use this during the day? You would not use it at night, right? Or would you? I don't know. Would it help with sleep if you have it just before sleep?
It's a hot topic, Richard, and the debate is still out there. We always recommend to use it if we do 2 times a day, in the morning and in the evening. So kind of like our circadian rhythms, we want to regulate that. So when infrared is highest, of course, in the morning, and then once again in the evening. So we try and keep aligned with our circadian rhythms in that sense. Of course, it's infrared light that we're using, but we
Yeah.
have also seen individuals use it in the evening to actually support sleep on specific protocols. It's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Interesting. It just seems that if you were firing up your mitochondria in the brain, I mean, like making it more active, that would not be conducive for sleep.
You say
Biology is
that,
like
but
that.
then we like some people have reported that it's put them to sleep. Literally, they're putting the device on in the evening or at night, and they're falling asleep with it on. And then you have the other kind of reports and studies that are coming in talking about how PBM or photobiomodulation is actually improving the lymphatic drainage system that's happening when we sleep. So if it's accelerating that process and putting you in a deeper sleep, removing all the toxins out your waste system, well, arguably, it's maybe the best time to use the device or for any photobiomodulation device. But as Will said, it's a hot topic. We don't have the answers yet, but it's a very exciting kind of time to kind of look at this. And I think, if you can improve your sleep using light therapy before bed, that's going to be pretty awesome.
Yes. Would you see it as being perhaps the second device? Would that be useful for aging? Because as we get older, right, our brains generally slow down, and we
Hmm.
would. So we don't have MCI yet, but still, it's always better to be able to think faster and have better cognitive capabilities. Uh, would it help with that? Any experience?
Yeah, so typically it's not something we have a study on because we haven't measured like starting points and end points with like the aging population at large. But you kind of know from looking at the research that yes, it's helping with aging because it's keeping your brain in the most active condition it can be. And we've done like controls of like N1 where someone's put on the neurocatch device which measures your event related potential. So say on the N400 someone had the cognitive processing speed, we got their baseline, then we did 10 minutes of the device, and then after did another cognitive assessment using the neurocatch system, and we could show a 14% increase after just one session in the cognitive processing speed on the N400. In another study using 1064, they were also shining, I think it was a laser in this one, on the prefrontal cortex, and it improved short-term working memory by 25%. So these are the kind of studies that we're seeing talking about like memory and cognitive processing speed. So healthy individuals would surely gain, benefit from this too.
Can you? There was a couple of words in there that I did not know about. So with the catch something system for
Sorry.
so what? How were you measuring the person's, I guess, response speed?
So the event-related potentials, ERPs, it uses a device that goes on the head and it has sensors, and basically there's an audio cue as well with it. So it sends you stimuli, and essentially it depends how quickly your brain reacts to that stimuli.
Okay, so you're using like a visual or an audio cue, and you're looking at the brain, at the right area of the brain, and you're saying, okay, so now we see the wave, and this is how big the wave is.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Right, and it gets bigger. Okay. Do you do any measurements of like behavioral, like using computer games, and you can see that the actual speed of reaction improves?
We haven't got a study out there currently that looks at that, but what's interesting, especially within a consultation process, what we've quickly found out is using a modality, for example, for if you're wanting to improve executive function or anything related with cognition, using something like a game alongside it, whether it's chess or Sudoku or something that is similar to a Stroop test, for instance. There's like almost a synergistic effect between the two, where if you use the device alongside this game, you're actually going to get further support, which is really interesting.
Hmm. So you're working with a university, University of Santa Clara. I-
Yep.
Can you talk about what yeah, can you talk about what you're doing with them?
Yeah, I can give you a brief overview. So essentially, what we did was the idea of what we spoke about with the EEG, right? And I told you it was a broken down process in which the consultant would look at the EEG map, and then they would program the device to set up the device to pulse at a certain rate or a certain quadrant of the brain. When we were working with Santa Clara, what we wanted to do was make this kind of closed feedback loop. So you didn't need the consultant to look at the map. The actual device that we were trying to create would read the brain with the map, go into the data system, and then influence the device's ability to choose what to do. And using like an algorithm, then basically do the same thing that the consultant does. So this was not our next generation device, but in the future. So we invested in this project to prototype basically another device that would have a closed feedback loop system, potentially use AI to customize the programs specifically for your brain. So every single protocol was specific to you, and that could change on a daily basis, because it could get so specific to your personalized needs.
That would be cool. So,
It would be very cool, but it was hard to do, and the light, it was having an effect with the measurement that was being picked up from it. So actually, we need to redesign, and we need to rerun another experiment, and create something. And I know, Will, you were involved with that as well, and probably can speak to the kind of outcome that came from it.
Yeah, it's there's so many variables to actually take into consideration when trying to develop a complex system like that, and it just needs to be further refined. Even having the helmet placed slightly above by a centimeter and having the EEG placement of electrodes, for instance, if we're going to measure off EEG data, that can completely change the results compared to doing EEG assessments before and then using the device and then doing the EEG assessments after. So figuring these things out, it's just going to take time, and it is taking time, but it's exciting.
yes. So we talked about some of your trials. Are you working with well, are you conducting other trials at the moment? I mean, I think you have completed some with the existing device. Could you talk about what results you've seen there?
We currently have 11 studies ongoing, with shortly to be released. I think at least three within Q1, Q2, and then the rest by the end of the year, certainly. And then I think, as Salim touched upon, we have the white paper study from Neurocatch, which has already been discussed, and then the long COVID study as well, which basically compared transcranial photobiomodulation, so our device, against another red light therapy device that is for the whole body for long COVID. I think Liam touched upon that before, but basically they saw that the found cognitive improvements for this long COVID study in both groups. So the comparison was both significant for both groups.
the trials that you're doing are on healthy patients. Is that correct?
Not all of them. So the ones that we have one that we're running internally for mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's, and for that we're recruiting 20 people, and that should be published in a few months. So that then is on that condition. We have fatigue. We have another one, Alzheimer's, with the Dalry Brain Center, and we have another university. We started recently working with North Dakota University. I believe there's a third one on Alzheimer's, and then there is also one on healthy individuals. So we have quite a range. And typically, when working with different populations, depending on the researchers that are getting in touch with us and the funding that's available. So the trial that we're doing on mild cognitive impairment and early stage Alzheimer's, we're actually funding the whole trial. We're conducting that. We've got IRB approval, but we're conducting that study. Whereas some of the other ones, it's the universities and other organizations that have either purchased the device through funding programs, and they're conducting the study, and we're just advising with best programs, protocols, and anything else that we can help with. So some of them are collaborations with the universities, and then others we're independently doing.
Cool. I mean, it's interesting that the universities are working with you. They're reaching out to you to use the device.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier. It's really crazy the amount of publications coming out on the topic. If you look on the NIH database, each year that bar graph is just going up and up with the amount of publications coming out each year. And that's just with the search term photobiomodulation. If you type in photostimulation, light modulation, every other name that's been called in the past before the industry conclusively said, hey, we need to stick with one thing, then you're going to find a lot more. And I put a post, I think it was a couple of months ago when it crossed that 10,000 threshold. And I remember someone commenting saying, hey, it's way past that point years ago. You were just looking at that one search term. There's so many more. So some people think it's in the multiples of the tens of thousands.
Yeah, actually touch upon that, and I think it deserves credit. If anyone out there who may have not heard about it, it's a really good place to access any photobiomodulation, any infrared light therapy research. Vladimir's database. It's an Excel sheet that has over, I think, minimum 14,000 research articles, and it's a brilliant comprehensive list that you can just filter through if it's transcranial, if you want it in vitro. There's so many different things that you can really filter in it. It's a superb database.
Yeah, cool. I will. If you could send me the link, I'll put it in.
Of course, yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, there's not many people producing helmets with 1070. So if people want to do a trial on head 1070 nanometers, then there's not a great deal of option. There is yourself. I think, there may be another company.
I think we're seeing more and more kind of pop up, and it's only normal. I think there's more studies using it. They're seeing the results. We're not the only ones that have noticed studies and then chose the 1070, and now it's becoming more accessible. And I think, like any industry, you're going to have more people entering the market. We've definitely seen that since we started, and it's a good thing, because it shows there's evidence there. Other people are seeing the trends, and it's helping people. If it wasn't, then it'd be a lot harder to stay in business for so many years. And you have other companies that have been around for like 15 years, and they surely wouldn't have been around that long, if the devices weren't working in the way they were saying they would. So it's a really exciting time. And yes, I think we're lucky and fortunate that we picked the 1070, and a lot of researchers want to use that wavelength and come to us looking now to do these studies. And I hope we can conduct many more. Will said we have 11 ongoing. I think there's maybe another 10 in the kind of planning stages as well. So we're really excited about it, but it takes a lot of time. There's so many different review processes to go through, conversations to be had, protocols to be developed, and boards and committees that have to agree. So yeah, it takes a while.
Yes, I can believe that. We did talk to Dr. Chazot, and he was very positive about the possibilities of red light and 1070 with Alzheimer's, and especially given how basically chemicals, drugs have failed so far to come up with a good solution. Do you see when you use 1070, do you see any physiological change in the brain? I mean, so if I use this device, does it actually make the brain better, or it just improves it working temporarily, and then I always need to do it again the next day?
I think at the moment with this device, you can never really state our device changes physiological neuronal changes. That we can state, I would say, symptomatic changes, certainly. And that's what we really have seen, especially with clients where I know we've had few where they've not been able to actually speak when they've had Alzheimer's, for instance. And then you look over a 3 month to 6 month period as well, and we're getting reports and they're coming back to us saying, I've got my mother back, I've got my grandmother back, uh, it's beautiful to hear and remarkable to hear. And it further fuels the motivation, as always, like this is the right direction to go down.
Where do you see the future of, I guess, your company, but also red light therapy in general?
I think red light therapy is going to become, in the toolbox of every modern doctor's practice. Just looking at the evidence that's mounting up on it, I think the biggest problem that we have in the light therapy industry is measurement standards, and secondly, the fact that there's so many applications for it. People that are doing everything with it through the eye, for example. Some people are working on it with cancer. Some people are heavily focused on autism. Um, Everyone's like so niche on a topic that not enough money is being poured into one thing to get it really approved for that to build a momentum. I think it will happen, and it's cool to see it having such like an application on so many things, and it shows like the fundamental benefits are there, which is really good because it's like natural healing in a way, and it's not doing anything to actually damage. In terms of our company, uh, I think we're in the early stages. There's a lot of ways to grow. We're definitely making it more accessible to people at home, but we want to build on the technology as well and let clinicians keep exploring the possibilities of it using targeted approaches. And who knows, with the device, you have a lot of different options. You see the health and wellness trends now with Oura Rings, Whoop, all the tracking devices. People are very much into tracking everything health related. So there's no kind of big device that I know of. Maybe the one you mentioned, Neuralink, is going to be able to read your brain. But if we could find out a way to put something on your brain, non-invasive, but take measurements of it and collect that data and let people see and access their own data to say, hey, your brain health score today is 72. Here's what you can do to improve that. Go on a brisk walk and it will be 75. Make sure you get your vitamins in and do this and that. And you're kind of helping just increase the person's, I suppose, awareness to their current brain state, but then also the things that they can do that are non-invasive that are actually going to help them and just stay in tip-top shape. So
Yes,
there's a lot you can do.
yeah, I was it just made me think. I mean, if you could measure the blood flows in the brain, you would be able to get like early view as to whether somebody is going to get MCI or mild cognitive impairment. You could also, I mean, the brain also has many like small metabolites that it needs, right? And it's probably very difficult to tell whether you're short on any of them, but you might be able to view that with such a device. So you need to supplement with
Exactly.
phosphatidylserine or something. Yeah.
Well, there you go. And I think, we're going to have so many wearables that they're all going to be connected. You have the Oura Ring, you have maybe a glucose monitoring system, you have a helmet. I don't know, you have something for your foot. I don't know what that's going to be. And you're getting this holistic view of how you are as a person. And you can use all this data to just live your best life. I think, some people are going to say, oh, it's too much data. And you'd be crazy because you'd be overwhelmed and you'd be too focused on it. I think there's a fine balance with everything. If you keep it in moderation, it's quite all right.
Yes, and hopefully your AI pal would do most of the work of pulling it all together eventually, although who knows when that will be. If people want to find out more information and follow what you're doing, where can they go?
Neuronic done online. is the website link. Everything's on there that we do. So from our blogs to our newsletter subscription, to the events we're attending, the clinician rounds, it's all on the website. You can order straight from there or talk to us in the chat. And then we're on the usual social media platforms. We have Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if you're interested in any of those, just follow us at Neuronic.
Okay, we will link to those. And you ship worldwide?
Yes, we do.
Excellent.
Free shipping worldwide, and we have a return policy for 90 days. So if you're in the US, 100% return policy for 90 days. If you're outside the US, it's actually 80%, which is still, by any means, pretty good standard.
It is. Okay. Will and Liam, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Richard.